One playoff game, one pointed finger, and suddenly the spotlight wasn't on the scoreboard anymore. It was on the fans. In a matter of seconds, what looked like a routine night of basketball turned into one of the most talked about controversies of the season. The story wasn't just about a game, it was about what happens when perception and reality collide in front of thousands. It began with a single gesture that caught everyone off guard. In the middle of a heated playoff matchup between the Atlanta Dream and the Indiana Fever, Alicia Gray suddenly turned toward the stands and pointed. The signal was sharp and deliberate, enough to send security rushing into the crowd without hesitation. Within moments, a pair of Fever fans were escorted out as the broadcast cameras quickly cut away, leaving television viewers stunned and guessing what had just taken place. From the outside, it looked like something major, the kind of ugly confrontation that demands immediate action. The mood inside the arena shifted instantly. Instead of focusing on the scoreboard, thousands of eyes turned toward the stands, trying to piece together what they had just seen. Atlanta wanted the message clear. Their star had been disrespected and the issue demanded attention. But beneath the surface, the reality wasn't nearly that simple. That single moment would ignite confusion, speculation, and a narrative that quickly spun out of control in ways no one expected. The morning after, the story should have been clear. A player pointed, fans were removed, and the explanation should have been straightforward. Different outlets began describing the incident in completely different ways, and the versions didn't match. Some reports painted it as harmless heckling, the kind of playful jab that players hear every single night in arenas across the league. Others hinted at something much darker, a supposed personal remark that crossed a line, though no one seemed willing to give specifics. On television, replays only showed Gray pointing and the couple being let out, without a single word heard on the broadcast. That left space wide open for speculation. Social media picked it up immediately, and the gaps in the story became fuel for every kind of theory. The problem was obvious. If the reason for removing fans during a playoff game really was so serious, why wasn't the explanation consistent? Instead of clarity, the public was given a messy patchwork of rumors that only deepened the confusion. As the dust settled, first-hand accounts began to surface, and that's when cracks in Atlanta's story became impossible to ignore. Fans seated just a few rows from the incident recalled what was actually shouted, and it wasn't anything close to an insult. According to multiple eyewitnesses, one fan had simply yelled encouragement to Indiana's Lexi Hull, saying, "You're good, Lex, she's not even trying anymore." The comment wasn't vulgar, it wasn't personal, and it wasn't even directed at Gray. Yet within seconds, that ordinary piece of courtside chatter had somehow escalated into a confrontation that brought security storming over. Even more telling, the fans who were escorted out didn't stay gone. Security allowed them back into their seats later in the same game, even offering an apology for the confusion. That detail said it all. If the remarks had been truly offensive, there's no scenario where fans are removed and then quietly welcomed back. The eyewitness stories spread quickly online, and suddenly the foundation of Atlanta's version of events began to collapse in real time. When the clips of the ejection hit social media, the narrative spun completely out of control. The video showed only Alicia Gray's sharp point toward the stands, followed by security escorting fans out, and without context, people filled in the blanks themselves. Some users quickly assumed the fans must have crossed a serious line, throwing out claims of harassment or abusive remarks, while others were convinced the removal was a massive overreaction. The lack of audio meant no one could verify what was actually said, and speculation flooded every corner of the conversation. Hashtags started trending, with some defending Gray's actions as a stand for player respect, while others accused Atlanta of manufacturing drama to disrupt the Fever's momentum. For the couple involved, the fallout was overwhelming. Strangers online dissected their behavior, their motives, even their appearance, despite the fact that none of those things were relevant to what really happened. What should have been a minor, forgettable moment in a playoff game had now exploded into a public controversy, one fueled less by facts and more by the chaos of online perception. As the questions mounted, Atlanta tried to get ahead of the story. Statements were released suggesting that the fans had crossed a line, framing the removal as a matter of protecting their players from disrespectful or inappropriate behavior. But the more they explained, the less it seemed to add up. Instead of providing a clear account of what was said, the team leaned on broad terms like heckling and unacceptable remarks, phrases vague enough to cover almost anything. That vagueness created more doubt than certainty. If the words had truly been offensive, why not specify? And if they weren't, then why the removal at all? To many, Atlanta's response felt less like transparency and more like damage control, as if they were scrambling to justify a decision that didn't stand up under scrutiny. Their reluctance to address the eyewitness accounts or acknowledge the fans' return to their seats only deepened the skepticism. What should have been a chance to clarify the situation instead widened the gap between what the team was saying and what everyone else had seen with their own eyes. On the other side, the Indiana Fever handled the situation very differently. Rather than issuing long explanations or pointing fingers, the organization stayed largely quiet, choosing not to escalate the controversy. Their players, too, avoided fueling the debate. Lexi Hull, the one mentioned in the fans' supportive comment, never suggested she felt uncomfortable, nor did she imply that anything inappropriate had been said. For Indiana, the focus remained on basketball. The team had a playoff run to protect, and they weren't interested in getting tangled in off-court distractions. Yet that silence spoke volumes. By not backing up Atlanta's version of events, the Fever indirectly cast doubt on the narrative being pushed. If a line had truly been crossed, one would expect Indiana to stand in solidarity with their opponent, but that never happened. Instead, the absence of agreement from the Fever made it clear this wasn't their fight, and they weren't about to legitimize a story that didn't match what their fans and players had experienced firsthand. As the debate spread, the incident stopped being about just two fans and Alicia Gray. It became another flashpoint in the larger conversation about the relationship between athletes and spectators. Across sports, the balance between passionate support and crossing a line has always been delicate, and this moment was suddenly pulled into that bigger storyline. Commentators began asking whether players had too much influence in deciding which fans should be silenced, while others countered that athletes shouldn't have to tolerate disrespect in their workplace. The problem here, however, was that the supposed disrespect was never clearly established. That distinction mattered because when the public compared this case to real instances of abuse or harassment in arenas, the Atlanta situation looked weaker by the day. Instead of highlighting an important issue, it risked diluting it. The larger narrative became less about protecting players and more about how quickly a misunderstanding could spiral into headlines, damaging credibility not only for one team, but for the league's handling of fan conduct overall. The real turning point came when more concrete details finally emerged. Reports from those seated near the couple made their way into mainstream coverage, confirming that the supposed heckling was nothing more than a lighthearted cheer for Lexi Hull. Security staff acknowledging the mistake by allowing the fans to return to their seats only solidified that version of events. At that moment, the weight of public opinion shifted sharply. What had once looked like a clear-cut case of unruly fans was now being reframed as an overreaction, one amplified by Atlanta's unwillingness to clarify from the beginning. Even some who initially defended the team began to question how the situation had been handled and why the simplest explanation hadn't been given right away. The spotlight turned back onto Alicia Gray, not for her performance on the court, but for a decision that now seemed excessive. The shift marked a clear divide. Before, doubt lingered. Afterward, the consensus was that the removal never should have happened in the first place. In the days that followed, the dust began to settle, but the ripple effects of the incident were hard to ignore. For the couple at the center of it, what should have been a fun playoff memory turned into a stressful ordeal. Their night remembered not for the Fever's performance, but for being singled out and escorted away in front of thousands. For Alicia Gray, the episode became an unwanted distraction, overshadowing her contributions on the court and sparking debates about player authority and accountability. For Atlanta, it left a mark on their credibility, raising questions about whether their response was guided more by emotion than fairness. And for the league as a whole, it highlighted how quickly a minor misunderstanding can escalate into a public controversy when clarity is lacking. The final outcome wasn't just about who said what in one arena on one night. It was about trust, transparency, and the fine line between protecting athletes and overreaching. The aftermath proved that even small moments can echo far beyond the game itself.